A couple of days ago, I went to my friend Josh's house and noticed something peculiar. As I approached the house, I noticed that there was a computer tower standing outside by the trash bin. When I asked my friend what was that all about, he said, it's just some 10-year-old piece of garbage. It was in the shed for like years. But here's the funny part. He then said to me, anyway, mate, I'm buying a $400 NAS, so I can't keep hoarding that trash. So I brought the computer over with me, and today we're going to transform that trash into a full-blown kick-ass server with a NAS, local AI, media server, and a lot more. Let's see if we can avoid him spending $400 on a new NAS. Now, I have vacuumed it a bit before bringing it over, but right off the bat, it doesn't really seem that bad. The case was a bit battered, but the board seemed perfectly fine. If it will post, now that's another story. The first thing I knew I would have to replace was the power supply. I didn't even bother testing it with the multimeter because since the board is an Asus P8Z77V, my friend was right. The computer is at least 10 years old. So I got this Corsair 650 watts on sale on Amazon for $45. It's not modular and only has 3 SATA power connections, but for what it is, it's good enough. The computer came with 8 gigs of RAM, placed really badly, I must add, so I thought in increasing the size a little bit. And I got an additional 16 gigabytes for $24 on Amazon. I also thought I wouldn't have to change the CPU fan. So all I did was reset the CPU and clean the old paste with alcohol, which came right off, and applied a little bit of thermal grizzly paste that I had left over from a build I did last year. I probably could have kept the SSD, but it was only 120 gigabytes, so I got this new PNY SSD with 500 gigabytes for $33 on Amazon. Oh, and another thing that I bought extra was an HBA controller for the NAS, and I got a second-hand one for $20 on eBay. They are dirt cheap secondhand and work really, really well. You can also try AliExpress for brand new ones, but this one looks fine for me. The GPU seemed fine, but for an NAS, I don't really need, a GPU. And this one only has 1 gigabyte, so I rather remove it and save the additional 10 to 12 watts of power. I was actually trying to sell it, but I came across a guy on Facebook Marketplace that offered to exchange it for a 2.5 gigabit network card that he bought on AliExpress for $16. According to him, he ordered a network card, and when the card arrived, he realized the computer that he had was so old it didn't have a PCI Express slot. We became friends. The last and final piece was the HDD. I got 2 4TB Seagate Ironwolf NAS drives refurbished on Amazon for $150. Comes with a year of warranty also, so it sounded like a pretty good deal to me. And I'm not going to include the drives on the price count because typically NASs or popular vendors for NASs and single board computers, they don't really come with them, and you need to purchase them separately anyway. I gotta say it looks pretty damn good. The CPU fan is in pretty good condition. The RAM is not flamboyant with blinking LEDs, but who cares, because it's not like I'm going to be looking at it. And there is enough room in the case for the air to circulate. The next thing was to power it on and hope it wouldn't explode in my face. This actually felt like when you're restringing a guitar. So the CPU is nice and cool, and I went to the BIOS and placed the CPU into energy saving mode, not to mention that it will be really good on the electricity bill and the environment. So the only real trash here was the PSU, and I got a brand new unexpected 2.5 gig NIC that sounds cool, that I couldn't wait to try. Folks, I can tell you that this was such a fun afternoon, but the best is still to come, especially if you hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Now comes the software part. I'm going to be honest, at first my plan was to install Proxmox, but then I realized that the CPU was an i7-3770K, and that CPU supports virtualization, but it doesn't support VTD, and therefore no support for remapping for IOMMU. So PCI pass-through for my 2.5 Ethernet card was not possible. So instead, I decided to install the NAS on the bare metal and use the apps it supports instead. There are two NASs I actually really like, TrueNAS Scale and Unraid. Now there are some pros and cons for each, but since Unraid is pay and this is a very conservative machine, there's no point in adding an extra $60 to the bill. And installation is a breeze. All you gotta do is go to the TrueNAS website, download TrueNAS Scale, I wouldn't really bother with Core, and then we need to use Rufus to create a bootable USB stick with the TrueNAS image. Now, very important, during the prompt, make sure you select DD mode or it won't boot. Pop the USB stick into the computer and boot from the stick. The installation is simple, just pressing install and following the options. Make sure to select the SSD drive though, and not the HDD drives for the NAS. Enter username and password and let it do its thing. Reboot, and once it's up, access it via the web browser. In my case, the IP is 192.168.10.48, but yours might be something different, and for sure it will be something different. Enter admin for user and the password that you defined during the installation. Now that we have the computer running, and it's looking pretty nicely here, we need to set up our NAS, our TrueNAS. So the first thing is network configuration. I have two cards, and this one is my 2.5 gig, which is the one that I want to use. So let's configure a static IP. Click Edit, untick DHCP, add aliases, and some IP that you want to choose. So I'm putting this one here, 192.168.10.29 with a CIDR of 24. Enter the default gateway, and in my case, it's going to be 192.168.10.1, and register. Click Confirm and test the changes. Then we need to open another tab and enter the IP that we just configured. Log in and save. Now click the global settings under the network configurations again and change the domain and set the DNS server. After doing that, let's check if we can ping Google, for example. So just head over to the system shell and great, it's working. The next step, we're going to create a pool for my two NAS drives. Let's click on storage, create pool, and let's call it Bleach NAS. Most of my servers have anime names because I freaking love anime, and yes, I am 42 years old, but who cares? I only have two drives, so mirror will have to do. For now, I'm not interested on any other options, so we just click save, go to review, and create the pool. Confirm, and this will erase everything in the drives. Okay, everything seems to be nice and healthy. With our pool created, we now need to create the data sets. You can think of these as the folders or the root folders inside your pool. Click on Manage Datasets and Dataset. Let's call it Bleach Share. Just change the share type to Samba, because we will want to use these shared locations over the network. Hit save, and that's it for the data sets. Let's create a user so we don't have to access everything with admin. So go to Credentials, Local Users, Add User. Now, let's share this data set using Samba or SMB. Click on Shares and Add Share. Select the path to the share and enter a description. Then hit save. The next step, let's edit the file system ACL list or ACL list. Click Add Item, select the user you just created, and in my case it's Philippe, and set permissions to full control. This means that we can add or delete files, and read of course. Save the ACL list. Let's see if I can access this. Let's go to Windows and create a location pointing to our NAS. Now let's select a big file to share, and look at this. 280 megasecond. It was really good to trade that old AMD for this $16 2.5 gigabit card. There are for sure a bunch of things that we could do here with TrueNAS, like encryption, compression, deduplication, etc. But honestly, it's a home server, so I don't really need data encrypted, and I'm sure neither does my friend. However, there is one thing I will add, and that's snapshots. This is great if you accidentally delete a file and want it back. Head over to Data Protection. Under Periodic Snapshot Tasks, click on Add. Let's select a snapshot, but let's leave it for 2 weeks. Let's just create one snapshot manually so that you guys can see what this does. Go to Dataset and hit Create Snapshot. Select the dataset. In Manage Snapshot, let's enable Show Extra Columns, and we can see that we have a reference of 1.46 gigs. Now, if we delete the file or the image file that I just previously copied in our share, we can either roll it back in TrueNAS, or we can go to our share folder, click on Properties, then Previous Versions, and restore it. And just like magic, our file is back. One of the wonders of ZFS. As far as the NAS goes, the configuration is done. And now for the most fun part of it all. The thing that is really going to bring this little old vintage box to life. Let's move on to the goodies. If you click on Apps and check Available Apps, look at this beauty. And these are only the official ones, but we can extend this catalog even further and install TrueCharts, the unofficial app catalog. Click on Discover Apps and Manage Catalogs and Add Catalog. Let's call it TrueCharts. Copy the URL from the official TrueCharts website and hit save. This will import the catalog. Now look at this apps galore. If I remember, I will leave the URL for TrueCharts in the description. If it's not there, can someone please let me know in the comments and I'll upload it. Now I'm not going to go into massive detail for every app, otherwise this video would be even longer than what already is. But what we're going to do is the following. First, we're going to create an app data dataset for all of our apps configuration. Then, as children dataset, we create the folders for each of the apps that we are going to config. And in this case, it's going to be Adguard, Home Assistant, Ollama. The reason why we create these extra folders or these extra data sets is so if we need to reinstall an app, we don't need to set up the entire thing from scratch. The first thing we're going to install is going to be Adguard, because we all need ad blocking. And if you don't know what ad blocking is, I have some videos about that as well. Make sure that you set the configuration to the path we defined earlier. Also take note of the port we configure here, because we're going to need to specify this during the Adguard wizard setup. You can leave everything else as default, I believe, and choose a username and password. Then go to filters and choose the filters that you like. I take pretty much all of these here, plus the unblock filters. Adguard is great, and as a test, we can simply go to our own local machine and change the DNS server to the server that we just configured. And look at this, check how amazing that works. If you're happy, you can add that to your VLAN DHCP server. And again, if you do not know what a VLAN is, check out my other VLAN videos because I have a couple of them already. Or you can just add to the general DNS settings in pfSense or any other routing software that you may use, so that every network in your home goes through this ad blocker. Next is Home Assistant. Home Assistant is a great app that allows you to control your home apps, like smart devices, your boiler, check your energy usage, amongst many other features. Pick the right time zone. And for the configuration for Home Assistant, make sure that you point to the folder that we created. You can also create separate folders or data sets for the database. For now, this is good enough. Then you can just click on Install. One really cool thing that I like to do is set up my Adguard configuration in Home Assistant so that I have everything in just one place. Go to Services and Integration, search for Adguard, enter the IP and the port, remove the SSL tick boxes, and done. The next one is my favorite, Ollama AI. Have your own LLM or large language model, just like ChatGPT, but in your private network. That way, you can keep your own data private because the models will run locally. This is why we installed TrueCharts, because TrueNAS doesn't really support yet Ollama. Now check the right time zone. Under Storage, select Host Path and the data set that we created. Change the size of the quota, and this is important, otherwise you're going to end up with 250 gigs of space. And if you have a lot of RAM, you can increase it or add a GPU if you have one. Now when you first launch the web portal and register, we can see that we have no model available. So we need to install a few models for this stuff to work. Go to the shell of the container. Now that we are on Bash, we can run Ollama commands and install the models that we want. Just type Ollama run Llama 2, which is the model name, and this will install the model. It just takes a little while because the files are nearly 4 gigs. But this is the way you can install any model. You can enter prompts directly in the shell, or you can use the web UI version for, well, the same purpose. Now remember that this computer is an oldie and it doesn't have a GPU because I traded it, so it's a little bit slower. But if I run the same prompt on my other Llama server, running on my Titan server, which has, an old GTX 2080, which is still a pretty powerful GPU, the results are, well, considerably better and a lot faster. But, still, it's pretty cool that a 10-year-old computer is running AI. Finally, Jellyfin, your own little private media server a la Netflix, but for free. Now, I always recommend using the official TrueNAS apps for obvious reasons. The folks at iX Systems not only test, but stand by the applications that they recommend and allow on their platform. And the documentation and the support on the forums is really good, and it's a really nice community. Anyway, click on install. I'm going to leave everything as default, including the configuration folders. We just need to add the share that contains our media files so that Jellyfin can scan it. This is typically the place where you have all of your media. You can have one data set or several. The structure is entirely up to you. In my case, I'm using the bleach share that we created earlier. If you run into this screen, it's downright annoying, I know, but this is because we had a previous installation of Jellyfin. So you can either use another browser, clear the cookies and cache, or just simply open a private window and just enter the URL and it should just work straight away. Just follow the instructions, and on the media part of the wizard, select the mount path you configured on the additional storage, which again in my case was bleach share or /bleach share. I like and rate, but I have to say TrueNAS is a soft spot for me because it's free. The community is really helpful, free. They are also very, very friendly, it's free. The support is great, the apps are just amazing, and it's free. So there you have it, folks. A repurposed server that was pretty much on its way to the garbage dumpster. And yeah, it's a little bit bulky, but it's an i7-3370K CPU. Now it has 24 gigs of RAM, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet card, an HBA, and a brand new PSU. And here's the cool part. It's consuming an average of 40 watts of energy, and for a total of $120. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to, go to your friend's trash, but you can find components like these on eBay, garage sales, Facebook Marketplace, you name it. So before just jumping straight into like a popular vendor, try looking in all of these places. And trust me, most of the times they are cheaper and way more powerful than a Celeron CPU, for example. This was a really fun afternoon, but I'm afraid it concludes our video. If you got this far, thanks for coming along on this journey with me. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Take care, and I'll see you soon.